we'll get started. I'll call the meeting to order. If we could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to the December 5th, 2019 Town of Riverhead Planning Board meeting. The first few items on the agenda tonight are discussion items. So what we'll do is we're going to come down to the table and we'll come back up here for the public hearings because we have to look at some maps. But the first one is Central Square at Wading River.
I believe we had quite a lengthy discussion on this project. I think it might have been, I don't remember, November 7th, maybe not. I reviewed the plan, the latest plan I had, because I knew we were going to have a public hearing tonight. I wanted you to have updated comments, so that you have dated November 27th. And that's the plan that's facing the audience, the one I reviewed. On the back of the board is the plan I received today at 1 p.m. So I really didn't have the opportunity to review it in any sort of thorough manner. But it does appear to address some of the most major comments in my November 27th letter. One of the things was that they had incorrectly updated the parking calculations and decreased the parking too much. Now they've added back the parking that they need to have. One of the things I wanted to ask Peter is if you're proposing any land banking at this point.
No, I think the last thing Marty did, I think what happened was that you correctly pointed out in your prior staff report that you've changed the code to require less parking. So Marty Senlewski removed the parking to provide less parking. And then you most recently responded by saying, but you gotta add some more back in because some of it's medical office use that requires more parking.
Right, which I hadn't requested that it be decreased for the medical offices.
So Marty then responded, and you correctly say, if we give you a response, you know, we'll never get out of this communication back and forth, so we can do a resolution conditioned upon the submission of the final plat, making whatever change the planning board and you want to do. Otherwise, we go back and forth 14 times. So we took some parking out, then you said we took too much out, so we added it back in, and then you correctly say, well, it's kind of too late. I don't want to miss this meeting and have the public hearing. So I'll have the public hearing. I'll make the comments. It's the exact same plan that we had approved by the planning board.
Well,
And the changes were changes noted by planning staff that we had a public meeting on, that we said we would do the LED lighting, which was one of the questions I went back and forth. The client said, do it, we'll do it, and we did it. And the other one was the parking issue, which, again, you made some recommendations, we followed those recommendations, now we're following it again. So I think we're prepared with those adjustments, but as you know, this was one that the board approved and it expired, and I took the position that, geez, in reliance on the approval, we sterilized the back property. The town took a conservation easement, and they have the conservation easement on half of the property, the back half. And then in addition, we put a declaration and covenant on with the cross access for the neighbor in reliance on the approval. So I get it that at the end of the day, you said, but we have a code provision that says if you don't pull your building permits and get moving on your project, and we had no buyer at that time, nor tenants. So it's a wonderfully developed plan with help from planning staff and the planning board. And we'd like to say that there'll be somebody buying it tomorrow, but there isn't anyone today. So we're just looking for that reapproval, and, you know, it really reminds us that when you make conditions on a final approval, and it requires things like dedication of property or cross-access easements, or doing things before you will sign the map, wow, I did that. I did that in reliance on it, and now the town has taken a conservation easement, and I don't, I don't mind in the sense of, we deliver another check, we have another meeting, we go back and forth and refer things, but geez, at some point, I'm just saying, I'm just looking for a reapproval. I'm not looking to make changes on the plan, other than the changes that planning staff and the planning board say they would like to be made. The LED lighting, done. It's the only difference. What else? Change the parking. Okay, we will. So from my end, I mean, I'm just saying, at some point enough's enough, so I'm looking for the public hearing, I'm looking for any comments, and then I'm asking you to close the hearing, and then consider reapproving this at the next meeting. So, and by that time, you'll have seen, or Karen will see, that we've made whatever changes.
So the plans that were turned in just today, those are the only, you haven't had time to look at them, right?
Like I said, I looked at them briefly, and they seem to address the most substantial comments, but I haven't gotten into the whole review.
So I'm just, if that's all that changed.
Right.
Why did it take you until today to turn it in the day of the public hearing?
Because that comment was a second comment on parking. When Marty was given the first comment on the first staff report, it says, we've changed our parking requirements, and we require less parking. Take the parking out. And so he went and
No,
took the
that's
parking out.
Mhm.
However, what he didn't pick up on, that Karen then responded to when we turned it around, was, hey, you took out too much parking, because even though we changed the code provision on the parking on retail, you're maxing out some of this medical office parking, and that has to go back in. And that's why that was a second layer of parking comments, which wasn't done back in May. It was, we got your plans, you've made the changes, however, you incorrectly changed them because you took too much out. That was a
So-
rather recent.
So it
Could I
sounds
just
like
kinda
it's, one
clarify?
second,
I'm sorry.
it sounds like it's minor in nature,
Yes.
but my only concern is that we have a public hearing,
Right.
and the public hasn't had a chance to look at the map that we're having a hearing on.
Except that the difference is so minor as the amount of parking.
All right, well, that's why I asked.
In fact, the original plan, as you know, that is approved, has more parking than is even now being asked for, okay? This is sort of like a compromise between the two numbers.
And worse lighting.
And the LED lighting is there, and you asked for it. I remember the first meeting, I said, I gotta go back to the client and ask if he'll do LED lighting, because it might not be required, but you want it, and we agreed to do it, and we put it on the plan. So it is so minor.
Okay.
And the public hearing that was held prior shows more parking, okay? And so this one has a little bit less parking, but we've already revised it, and Karen correctly says, this is one thing I do agree, and I don't agree a lot of times, that when you deliver something to me because we've made a comment to your revisions, don't expect me to turn it around in a day. So, don't keep giving me new plans. I'd rather go, to a meeting and then change it. So at this point, I'd like to go forward with the public hearing. It shows less parking than was approved the first time. We're happy to do the first plan with too much parking, according to Karen. All right?
What are you saying, you wanna change it again?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying the originally approved plan, I was happy to say, just reapprove the plan.
And I
Okay?
didn't ask them to change the actual parking depicted. All I said was your parking calculations
Number,
are
right.
incorrect.
So
Um,
it was originally, excuse me for just a second, it was originally 304.
With
You
14
said-
land bank
I-
stalls.
You said 244.
No,
and
I
it's
told
up
them
to
285. I
285.
told
Now
them
it's
they needed
285, correct?
I told them they needed 285. They reduced it to 244
Right,
incorrectly.
but it's at
So now they've
285.
added it
Right,
back.
okay.
So, I just wanted to clarify, you're not proposing the land banking that was covenanted, so,
Right.
okay. So then, we will address that in the resolution somehow.
Yeah, you know,
Okay.
you do a conditional resolution, say, make whatever, I consider these very minor changes, and we'll do those minor changes.
But, I just kind of, I don't wanna go through everything, but most of the discrepancies I checked regarding the square footage and the acreage, those seem to have been cleared up. So I'm sure anything more minor regarding the plan itself, we could address, like he said, as conditions. The only things that I wanted to kind of, touch base with the board about was that, DOT, I know the board said they didn't want a new traffic study. DOT has said they want an updated traffic study. But certainly, if the board wants, we can move forward with some sort of condition regarding the, DOT approval. I just wanted to make sure, and I did kind of mention this at the original discussion, that, plan shows a traffic signal at the access to the west. The traffic study indicated both access points would be stop controlled. Also, in regard to the Pine Barrens Commission, they gave us a new letter, dated October 17th, as part of the coordinated review. Like I say in the letter, there were no requests for lead agency. We've got some typical comments from the health department and PSEG. And I did indicate, that we didn't get anything from DOT. Our last correspondence from them was, indicated that, they needed more information from the applicant. As far as the Pine Barrens Commission, they had said that the EAF left blank the number of traffic generated trips to the site, and they asked again if the project achieves the impact threshold for development of regional significance. The last time we had met, the board had indicated they were going to, they seemed to be leading towards you wouldn't be addressing that, as you kind of considered that a kind of, done deal, for lack of a better term, with the
Well,
last application.
Yeah, it was addressed last time, right?
Well, the board had indicated that you weren't going to pursue it anymore. You,
Because it was addressed in the last application, right? And nothing's changed on their end.
well, the Pine Barrens Commission was saying they believed it was the development of regional significance. The applicant came back with some additional information to the town, that was different from the original traffic impact statement, saying that, they believed it wasn't a development of regional significance, and the deputy town attorney at the time had written a letter to the Pine Barrens Commission saying who makes this determination. That was it. We had a discussion, and it was confirming the discussion that the Pine Barrens would make that determination, not the town. And asking for a response, and there was no response. So the planning board went forward at the time with that approval that expired. So, but, so I did go back and look at the EAF, and the section about is there a substantial increase in traffic was checked off no. So that information under that question was left blank. And I did notice a couple of other things were answered incorrectly, about there being no water line extension required, which it is required. The excavation question was answered incorrectly, saying that there is no exportation where there is. So I would at least hope to get a corrected EAF before the final.
Here's my comment. I'm asking for the same approval you gave us last time, with the same comment. Certainly DOT, we can't get a building permit till DOT, that would be a condition you would put on an approval, whatever they require at the time. Whenever we go for a building permit, they may require whatever, and we're gonna have to do to satisfy them for that permit. It shouldn't be a condition of the approval, just like the last time. And it should be just like the last time. We had a public discussion about this before, that you made us go study a lot the last time. We studied a lot last time. We had the experts submitted. We had a public discussion about it. I mean, enough is enough from the client's perspective, in my opinion. I'm just looking for a reapproval. I mean, let's hope that this well-designed plan will find a buyer and find a developer and find tenants to occupy it. I'm hopeful of that. But we need this reapproval to gain that impetus to move forward. So I'd like to conclude the public hearing, and I would like to get up there and just say, same plan with minor changes as recommended by staff, and let's move on.
I don't disagree, but the only point, I think we made it at the last work session, was, you know, all this time goes by and things change in the area. So things need to be looked at again. So if this, you know, if you don't find a buyer and you're back here in however many years and somebody else develops, the same questions may come up again.
And I hate to say this, because I don't wanna say it, I'm always proud of the town. I grew up here just like you did, and wanna say that people will buy this project because it's very, very attractive. It's not a big box presentation. It's spread out, well landscaped, and with preservation in the back. But the attraction and the only comments that I hear from people that bring real estate brokers up and down 25A is, everybody wants to do a Peconic Landing. Everybody wants to do a life care facility. Everybody wants to do something that requires higher density than is being allowed. And it would require a package plant and a change of zoning. And that's what seems to be out there as far as people saying, isn't this a need in the town? Yes, it is a need in the town. But will it be allowed at that stretch, at that corridor? You know, that's for somebody else to pitch and not me. I'm just saying, this is a well-designed project that I'm hoping, because of its design, and because of the input that everybody's had in this, a very attractive center. But without tenants wanting to occupy space there at that location, no developer builder is gonna build it, and that's the sad fact. So I'm looking.
Now you have competition across the street.
Well, it's a different kind of use though, you know?
Still,
Different kind of use on office side, and that's gonna be the same thing. I think, quite frankly, if everybody started without the expenditure of money, efforts, people would plant this in grapes tomorrow. And don't be surprised if it happens. So I've given a conservation easement on half the property, and I'll be asking the town to give it back if this doesn't go.
I don't think there's any, in any event, so, so we'll have the public comment portion, and then if the board wants to give me direction on the EAF,
Okay.
Peter,
So-
just let me
Thank
ask you a quick question. I can't relate. You submitted plans today, is that what I hear?
Yes.
Another set?
Yeah,
And
but.
they, wait,
No, no.
they addressed the comments on the 27th that you sent out?
again, I got it today at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, no, I
so-
said that, but that's the procedure.
Well, I looked at some of it,
That's what I
it seemed to
thought.
address the most
Good enough.
substantive issues, but I didn't get to look at everything.
Okay. Thank you. So if there's anyone from the public who wants to look at this revised map, just come forward and we'll make it available before we have the actual public hearing. That's the only one that's attached to the back?
Yeah, we can flip it over.
You
Don't wanna
stay
look at the back.
Okay, next item on the agenda, Riverhead Retail Partners.
Just get the file. Oops, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen.
Somebody's phone.
It's
a little low.
There's a little button.
Yeah, a little button.
All right, are we stuck on the sign?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah, that's what Karen said. So, the issue is the sign.
And as you know, and Eric will give some additional information, but as you know, this was brought up for the first time brought up as a requirement the night of the preliminary approval.
That's not accurate.
As a requirement?
Ed brought it up several times during our discussions.
But it was never indicated that it was going to be a requirement. Frankly, 7-Eleven, and there was a representative of 7-Eleven here, would not have done this deal if they knew that they
Okay,
would have to
well-
have pastels and earth tones. Now, Karen provided us with some visuals. So, did you look at them? I hope somebody did, okay, good.
Yeah.
Because what those are inline stores, those were acquired, by the way. And going into the deal,
What do you mean by required?
they were acquired.
Acquired.
They were acquired by they weren't developed by 7-Eleven. They're in Boston, they're in an urban area, right? They're mixed use, you know, you've got the stores on the street level, you know, the whole deal. And they went into that deal knowing that, they would have to have that signage. This is not an urban store. This is a suburban store. It's freestanding, it's not in line, and it's set back. And there's trees and there's landscaping, right? I think we've done whatever we can to make this tasteful, fit in with the community. But the problem we have, and Eric's gonna give us some additional information, is that 7-Eleven will not do the deal. That's what I am told. Because it's not an inline store, it's a freestanding store, it's set back. It's, you know, a lot of us, sometimes we're a little put off by branding and trade names, trademarks. Everybody knows this is their trademark. But here, this is what they need to make this store work. That's what we're told. We're being totally honest and blunt with you.
Yeah, I think you said it all. I mean, they compromised on the architecture, on the materials, agreeing to
They
a
didn't
monument center.
compromise on it, they made it better. You're in a historic downtown district, we asked the applicant to make it better, and they did.
Correct,
I
yeah.
don't think I would call that a compromise. You
No,
know?
we work with you.
Yep.
Yeah,
We work with you.
isn't that
I
what
don't-
a compromise
Don't
is?
disagree at
Yeah.
all. We work with you. It took a while. This has been going on, for, you know, you probably
Yeah.
realize, like 14 months. So we work with you. And Erwin, who's not available tonight, but he's always said that he's willing to work with you. But this is kind of like a line in the sand. It's not Erwin. This is not Erwin. This is 7-Eleven, which is going to be the tenant of the store and the operator of the store. And this is now an issue.
That's a freestanding building, that's a freestanding building, that's a freestanding, so 7-Eleven does compromise. I don't know anything.
I don't know where those stores are, I'll
Or
be honest
when
with
they
you.
took place.
Or when they took place, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I can only tell you that going into this deal, this is what I'm told, that going into this application, if they had known that they would have to have pastels and earth tones, they would not have done the deal. And I think we all want this to happen. I wish there was something I could tell you, you know, that I can do, but there isn't anything I can tell you that we can do, more than what we've already done.
I mean, I think 7-Eleven's opinion too is contextually their color scheme fits in with the immediate adjoining neighborhood. You know, within a couple properties is the Spicy's Barbecue, which is a bright red Safe Light Auto Glass, Lighthouse Insurance, which is the same orange, you know, color that 7-Eleven is.
Those are all pre-historic, historic district downtown. Those are all pre-existing
No,
before.
but it fits in, but it's the same type of colors.
contextual though,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
contextual.
Somebody had mentioned, the size of the sign. There might be an issue with the size.
Well, the sign includes the striping.
Right.
I spoke to the person in the building department who handles signage. So typically, if you have, a freestanding sign and a large sign on the building, the freestanding sign is considered your primary sign, and the sign on the building would be a secondary sign, and there is a square footage limitation on the secondary sign. I'm sorry, but I didn't bring that with me tonight.
But the way it's proposed right now, it would be okay.
I'm not sure. I think it might be too big with the striping.
I know the intent all along was to provide compliant signage, and that was one of the other items. They're not looking for anything giant or garish or anything. The
Will
intent was to
comply.
be code
So in other words, if the stripes had to be lessened to be in
Will comply.
compliance, that's not
Will
an
comply.
issue, it's
Nope.
just the colors and
Yep.
the trademark.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think, at this point, I'll just ask the board, individually, you know, if they're ready to move forward. And I do recognize you did a lot of work on the building and the clock and everything and made it look nice, so, I will tell you, I appreciate that, so, just to poll the board, we'll start with, Dick. Are you okay with it, as long as it's compliant with the town, sign code? Or are you stuck on the colors?
Am I looking like something like this?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the plan.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Ed?
I'm still deciding what I'm doing.
Okay.
Check with yours.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Okay, so, you got it. All right?
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
And like Stanley said, we
God,
do
working on
appreciate
clock.
the vast improvements.
It was.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't argue with you.
And I hope the, the maintenance level stays up. Some 7-Elevens, not so much.
I'm sure somebody will give us a call if it doesn't.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a great
appreciate
holiday.
it.
Thank you.
You too.
Thanks.
So what does it mean now?
Right, next item, Long Island Cauliflower Association Retail Center. You gonna open yours, Greg?
Yeah.
Let me get one. You got yours here or no? No, no,
Oh, you're doing this? I didn't know you were doing this one.
This is being done, the Cauliflower Association owns it. They've hired us to try to bring it to market and also to get it developed.
Okay. All right, Greg.
Alright, so the planning department has received and reviewed a site plan application which is proposing to develop a new retail center consisting of 45,487 square feet of sort of development, which is spread out into, now there will be some changes to this, and I will address later. Right now, the current site plan iteration shows 3 buildings which have sizes of 10,402 square feet, 12,730 square feet, and 17,420 square feet. Those would be the retail buildings, and there's a 4,935 square foot fast food restaurant with 152 seats proposed. Site plan also proposes 2 new curb cuts with ingress egress along Mill Road, as well as ingress and egress from Old Country Road. There is also lighting, landscaping, parking, and drainage improvements related to the site being proposed. We have received a site plan and we have received architectural drawings. Although, however, based on conversations with the applicant, I believe they are going to be revising the layout to show, I believe, a 2-building proposal. And that is what the architectural drawings do relay. In terms of the scope of the project, there are substantive comments enough in here. I believe that the change from 3 buildings to 2 buildings is not significant when viewed in relation of the entire scope of the project. So the board can initiate a SEQRA review, and we will get revised plans that will coincide with the architectural drawings that have been provided. As far as SEQRA goes, the proposed action is a type 1 action pursuant to SEQRA and Town Code Section 225, requiring mandatory coordinated review among involved agencies. A supporting full environmental assessment form has been submitted with the application. There are currently 2 sections which I noted which need to be amended on the full EAF in order to do a proper SEQRA review. One of them dealt specifically with the increase in traffic levels. The full EAF submitted indicated that the proposed action will not result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels or generate a new demand for transportation services. However, using the New York State DEC SEQRA EAF guide on their website, using their calculations, the proposed development would generate approximately 835 peak hour trips. Based on that fact, the full EAF should be amended to reflect yes for this question, and the remainder of that section filled out accordingly. The other section dealt with the average depth to the water table. I did not identify any test holes that were provided on the site plan. So right now, it's impossible to gauge depth to the groundwater. That'll be required for the EAF, for any stormwater management approvals, as well as SWIP. Preliminarily, staff has identified the following environmental concerns, which must be studied under SECRA. One being the traffic impacts. Staff would recommend that the applicant prepare a traffic impact statement in order for the planning board to provide, understand the potential impacts to the Old Country Road and Mill Road intersection, including truck traffic and circulation throughout the site, impacts to the Riverhead Sewer District, impacts to the Riverhead Water District, specifically taking a look at the proposed irrigation needs for the landscaping throughout the 7-acre site. Potential noise impacts. There is a manufactured home park which is located directly to the north of the subject site, with some of the existing residences being located approximately 15 feet from the shared property line, so they are in very close proximity to the proposed development, as well as stormwater impacts. As I said, being that there's no test hole, it's difficult to identify if these proposed stormwater management systems will be adequate. The subject location, identified as tax map number 600-101-1-11, is a 7.09 acre parcel located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Old Country Road and Mill Road. Property has approximately 250 feet of frontage on Old Country Road and approximately 1,100 feet of frontage on Mill Road. Subject property is located within the Business Center zoning district, which permits retail and restaurant uses as an as-of-right permitted use, as well as the associated drive-through as an accessory use to the proposed fast food restaurant. Site's presently improved with a one-story, approximately 6,200 square foot steel building with associated loading docks and ramps. All on-site improvements are proposed to be removed as part of the construction of this new retail center. So now digging into some of the finer points, the traffic circulation throughout the site. Site plan currently proposes 3 access points to and from the site, 1 on Old Country Road and 2 on Mill Road. The road opening from Old Country Road would serve as egress for westbound traffic, so you'd be entering westbound. It would not allow for eastbound traffic to enter the site, and would allow for westbound egress from the site continuing onto Old Country Road. The Mill Road access points consist of an ingress and egress, which is approximately 400 feet north of the Old Country Road intersection, and it's being proposed to line up with the existing Riverhead Center access site, which is a signalized intersection. The egress from the site appears to consist of a left-hand and a straight lane and a right turning lane, although the site plan does not clearly indicate the direction of traffic. The traffic impact statement the applicant prepares, if the board desires, should take into account traffic levels at this light so that the town can coordinate timing of any traffic signals.
Hey Greg, quick
Yes.
question. I see the southern entrance lines up with Home Depot's entrance, but in the backside where, and I'm assuming this is the cross access?
No.
Sewer
What's that?
easement?
No, yeah, that's the sewer easement. There is a, if you.
No cross access there?
No.
Oh, okay, that's why you didn't do it.
There is a, farther north on Mill Road, there is another proposed ingress and egress, which is, an unsignalized intersection. This does not line up with any, the secondary access to the Riverhead Center site. In a review of the intersection, staff notes that the northbound traffic pattern on Mill Road consists of a right turn only lane into Riverhead Center and a northbound lane. Without a redesign of this area of the intersection, you would kind of have a left-hand turning lane here, and it could potentially generate some backup if the intersection, does not include a left-hand turn.
Who would that fall under, being it's so far north of the county road?
That's a question, I mean, we'll get some of those answers to those questions when we initiate the secret review process. I don't know how far the county's jurisdiction, or, if it's an arterial road, there may be some impacts, they may have some comments, but again, once we get plans and we initiate the secret process, we'll get it out to DPW.
You shouldn't have just a left turn or a right turn lane. Anybody who wanna go straight, just have to wait till they ready to turn.
I mean, again, that's something that, if the board desires at the traffic impact statement, that should take that into account.
They've gotta do something.
Yeah.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Has due diligence been done on the property since it's been there such a long
In
time?
reference to?
Anything that might have gone on there, buried tanks, et cetera, previous use?
I don't know if we've done and again, this is owned by the Cauliflower Association,
Yeah.
their intent is not to sell it. So, I don't believe that they've done a environmental study on the property. I'm not aware of it.
It's been there a long time, it's had a lot of uses, the auctions, et cetera.
I don't think the auctions, were they contaminated?
No, I don't know.
Is it to store anything?
I just don't know what was going on, that's the whole idea of doing it.
store quite a bit of
They
equipment
they
there.
come in, they come in stages,
It
so
will
you
be
do a one
required,
and it
you know,
doesn't take
eventually
long.
they're gonna go, I assume they're gonna go for some bank financing, this or that would all be required and the
That's
like.
right.
It is a good idea, and we'll bring it up with them, that it may be prudent to do one now, and just check it out, but, the property in general is clean. The building that they currently have up here was, the story goes that it was one of Mendelssohn's buildings over here, and they kinda got it for free, so they moved it over here. So, and I don't think
Way
they've
to
done
go.
anything caustic in that building, they
Well, no,
took the storage.
I'm just thinking even the potential tenants might wanna make sure.
How about the levels, that ground is, if I remember correctly, I've passed it a million times. There's quite a bit of difference in some of those
Well, it
elevations.
does follow the road. There is a
Here,
dip in
here,
here.
but not here, yeah.
There is a dip in here, but there is a grade this way, and that's why we've designed this area actually as truck level.
Mhm.
So it is 4 feet down, this road is 4 feet down from, a truck can pull back and be truck level to this loading dock, which is finished floor level. So it takes into account the slope that heads off to, the office park that's here. And, we've kind of made this to be the truck lane, so trucks will enter here, head this way, and then that's why this exit is here, is that they'll be pretty much uninvolved with the center and its workings, in any given business day.
This front portion, doesn't this flood all the time?
Yeah, it does.
It holds
They-
water, right?
They actually, believe it or not, the answer was yes, and the county came in during the summer, and they actually corrected it. They put in dry wells and another catch basin in that turn lane that always used to flood. But that's why, so prior to that, in the original concept, Howie came up with, because there could be issue here, he came up with a thing to say, okay, we can use it as and you'd be better to explain this, but kind of an extra recharge basin. We came up with this idea of building a retaining wall here and using it for some signage for you gotta remember, there's only gonna be 2, 3, or 4 tenants here, that if, Johnson & Johnson could put their name here so that people would see it, and then we were asking for a pylon just so that they could come and enter the premise as they go. But, the thought I had was, we could utilize this retaining wall, because we want it to be higher than this curb, so that nobody can go that way. So we were building this wall, we were creating this recharge basin here, and that was going to solve some of the low-lying issues that exist here, and utilize the natural grades to do it.
What's gonna go on the other side, the
What are
highway
you
side?
pointing to?
Of
So-
the recharge basin, in this area here. You're gonna fence it in?
We weren't, it was one of the comments we saw in the thing, but this has a very gradual slope, and it's not that deep. If people feel that it needs to have some protection, we can always look into that, but this isn't I'm gonna say you're going from 24 down to 20 at the bottom. So.
We're talking about a parkway type, structure.
It's just
now.
a swell.
More
it's
attractive
not
than-
a,
more attractive
It's
than a
when there's
guardrail.
water in it.
we're hoping that it doesn't pond normally, and it would only be in those
Safe over.
crazy times that, it's not into groundwater.
No,
Did you do any test pits there?
we have done some test holes.
I don't know why they're not on the,
I think we did them subsequent to submission of the site plan.
okay.
Yeah, and I mean,
I'm not comfortable with that, with no protection on the other side. I like the idea of the trading.
Protection
company.
where, on this
Yeah.
frontage?
Yeah, all right. I just think it's too dangerous. Traffic around there is gonna be unbelievable. It's bad enough now.
Well, there'll be curbing and
There'll be
and
sidewalks
sidewalk
there.
and curbing, right?
yeah.
And then the
I-
drop-off is not really, would you say 4 feet maybe?
it goes from 26 at the top of the basin to about 20. So I mean, you're talking 6 feet over,
6 feet here and there's 5 feet here.
6 feet over maybe 15 or 20 feet.
So is Howie putting so if
Looks
that's
like he's got a
true,
little
because
outfall there.
this is 24, almost 25, and here he has it a little higher. Was he creating a berm around here?
Not that I'm aware of.
You know, I'm looking at this is at
Yeah.
24, this is at 26.
Mhm.
So, you know, we can review it with Howie, but he may have created this
He
to have
must
a
have,
berm.
because it's not that way right now.
Yeah.
It slopes towards,
Right.
58,
So he
so
may
he
have-
must have.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was a berm around it, would that,
Well, so they put a burn, then we're gonna ask for plantings.
okay.
All right.
So, you know, now that the
That makes-
county has fixed this,
Compromise, that would.
might be something that should just get possibly eliminated. I don't know how Howie has done his calculations for drainage and all the
You're
other
using this
stuff.
basin as sort of an overflow.
Just a
overflow.
safe overflow,
Yeah.
yeah.
But you have enough,
But we're,
you
yeah,
certainly
we're-
have enough leaching
This
basins
one,
above it.
Hatched area says parking landscaping. What exactly is the hatched area? Just north of the fast food, this area right here?
So, we have had discussions back and forth with certain tenants. That originally, it's not made for parking, but it could become a park. Like, if people wanted to have, an outside playground, or if they wanted to have outside seating, which is starting to happen even at fast food restaurants, that a person can sit down and eat. That's how I think, it was originally, like you're seeing here on the second page. You know,
Does
there's a
kind of
couple
show
of
it as an
picnic,
outdoor seating area.
it's kind of a picnic area.
You know, going around the outside here where the retaining wall is, you've got drainage that it all goes to one point before it goes into the pond. Wouldn't it be easier so that you didn't have to construct all this over here just to put another entrance right there into the basin? Then you don't have to construct all this?
It's much different in height, though.
Well, I mean, you're dropping everything down to the one point before it goes in. So that means this is lower, this is higher here than down there. So if you could go into the recharge basin there, then you don't have to worry about.
But you're saying, so maybe the answer is it goes from this.
This is all from here down, it goes down, 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 down to here.
Right.
All right, so if you stop this, eliminate it, and just go in here. With another.
We can show that to Howie.
With another entrance.
By the way,
You get rid of the piping.
show you in this photo. This was my point. This is, this area here.
Looking north.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to say. This is 48 inches, the height of that. This is street level,
Mhm.
so is the pad. This is 48 inches. That's what a standard, usually 48 to 53 inches is a standard.
Well, you're saying that this
Platform, yeah.
particular thing.
Yeah, right.
Right, but
So
that's
what
in the
I'm s-
middle of the property, it's not on the road edge.
I know, I
And you're
understand.
seeing that it's up 4 feet.
I know.
So.
That was my point about having to import, some fill in there, I think.
But look at where the curb of the road is compared to the land
I
of the
understand,
land.
but somehow, you gotta put the two of these together. You're not gonna.
What they did here is they built the platform, I don't think to pull a truck this way, it was to pull a truck into their entrance and be able to back
No,
up to
they
the
used to
thing.
back up to here
Oh,
when
yeah?
they load, they backed up.
That was where they,
Yeah, that's
for
what-
their auction.
Yep, yep, I remember that very well.
So, I don't know if we have a current topography of this?
Yeah, there's, the last couple of pages are
This is
existing
the
conditions. Sheet one.
That's why it was so long, because multiple trucks backed up in there and then.
Right.
then
So
they had the
here,
entrance.
you're basically at 25 in this world, and your road, I guess here is 29, 28 going back. So there's a 3 feet hole in here. There is a hole in here. So it does have to be regraded, things like that. There's a lot of drainage going into these sites. There's gonna be plenty of excavation coming out. Yes, we have to fix what is there.
Yeah.
You know, but you're seeing
my
here, you know, to our adjacent neighbor, we're at 26, almost going to 28. So some of those lines have to be.
Years ago, you've been around here long enough. Years ago, they used to, before they used to do a lot of orchards there.
Right.
Not just cauliflower.
No, they used to do.
But they sold equipment.
Yeah.
And they
It was a
would
trade
put
show.
equipment there, right, they would put equipment there for weeks prior to the
Right.
auction, you know, and it was whatever. And then they would do their auction in a
Right.
day.
And that was in the day that nobody cared about half the things that used to happen.
Those are the days, the good old days.
Siegel bag was the first.
Right.
Yeah.
Go back to that, the one you just had on the.
We were very surprised as we built the Rowley property, that we didn't come up with anything. And we don't know if it's because Mobile went in there and they spent like $2 million to clean up that property. They pulled out tanks, they pulled out everything.
Probably why, because over the years.
Let me see. I mean, they just look like breaks in the curb.
Yeah.
I don't know what the function of it is.
That's my question, the function. What is it? You got two breaks here, 1, 2. One of them looks like you had some drainage in, but.
It would
And
just
why
want
are
to
they-
know why these
why are they
We
breaks?
can ask
landscape
Howie, but I
breaks.
assume that's for water flow, because I don't
This
believe
one,
there's
this one
drainage in that
shows
one.
drainage.
Yeah.
Okay, this one shows, looks like a drain, okay, but here you don't have one. So,
That might be for staff to get to the dumpster corral, which is on the other side.
No, he's talking about this. 28, 25, so there is a slight slope
talking about
this
this patch right
way,
here?
but
Is that what you're talking about?
that this is
Because
It does look like there is a catch basin in one of them.
yes, right.
There is a catch
Yeah,
basin in
that's
one
right.
of them.
Yeah, I
so-
can see that.
Hard to see
Not
on
the
this
other one.
rendering, but you might see more detail on one of the other pages.
Yeah.
keep going,
All right, truck traffic. So the site plan doesn't indicate a specific ingress or egress point for truck trailer traffic. It is noted that the Riverhead Center retail site, state has signage all throughout the site that all trucks must enter using the Mill Road exit. I don't know if it's appropriate, as Mr. Israel said, you know, this site was sort of laid out to envision truck traffic circulating through the western portion of the site and out. So I don't know if it's necessary to kind of consider any specific requirements for trucks to enter at a certain location.
Well, I think you have to assume the trucks are gonna be coming from the west, right? So they're gonna go
Yeah.
up Mill Road. to
They
get
would
into-
have to go Mill Road. Right.
They're gonna exit at the northernmost and enter down here?
Right.
That's the assumption that we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I see, cause I saw you have a 2-lane road there in the back.
We're considering making this, or I was considering making it a one-way. Howie has made it wide enough, and I think that's just prudent for trucks, because if I have a truck here and another truck has to go by, a little extra Scotia room doesn't hurt. But I think all of our concepts were, all trucks would enter here, they would head this way, they could back into their space.
How about the restaurant? Where would that, how would that,
I
take place?
can't tell you that. Restaurants are their own breeds, you know, their trucks show up at the middle of the night, so.
That was one question I did raise when I spoke about the loading berths. So each of the proposed retail buildings does include a loading berth that complies with the town code. But as you pointed out, there's no loading area indicated for the fast food restaurant. That's something that I think the applicant should address, or, I guess it depends on the tenant, when they get their deliveries and that sort of thing.
Our assumption here is that when the fast food person shows up, they're gonna come and say, just like you heard from 7-Eleven, this is our square, this is our shape of our building, this is our whatever, and this is how we take deliveries. So I think most of that will get addressed at that time, but if we need to
Yes, you
try
can
to
see, I've
implement
seen
something now.
McDonald's deliveries, and
I
they
guess
come
we
in a
can
tractor
try.
trailer. And they usually, they'll take 6 or 8 parking spaces right in the front.
I mean, it's either that or
And
just,
unload.
you know, realistically, I picture a truck just stopping there.
And that
I
could
don't,
be, you know what, this could be the reason for his brakes, if you think about it.
to allow
'Cause
someone to make a
yep,
delivery.
a truck could stop over here, a truck could get around him,
Right.
and he could make the deliveries right in through here. That might not, that could be the reason he did that, which is not, that's a great idea.
So now, if this is being, if there's been conversations to have this as one way, would that eliminate an egress?
No, no.
Now you have,
From here north is
Right.
one way. I mean, I look at it to say, if people are going west from here, it's easier to let them out of this point than to start to clog this line and this thing.
I think you really have, the traffic people have to really study that 58 in and out. Because,
Right. Well, this
I
will
just
go in
think
front of the county,
with
so we figure.
traffic and people going in there and trying to get out, it could really back up. Both on 58
I
as
think
well,
most people will
inside
choose
direction.
to always, I'm gonna use the word local or person who understands, will always turn up Mill and use this light. You know, when, I believe this striping is enough to have a left-hand turning lane and everything else, and I think the traffic study will show that, or figure out what alignments, what stripes have to be here. You know, the light has to be changed, because right now the light goes from here, it only covers this lane. If you look at the light, there's a pole here and there's a pole here. So this intersection, the light poles have to go from here to here, has to address the outgoing traffic and the outgoing traffic of this. So, I think the person who does the oops, you know, and passes the intersection, at least he gets one more shot to come in.
I've driven that area many times, and that backs up now, without anything there.
We thought we fixed Route 58, but somehow it quickly got recongested.
No, you fixed it, and then you built it and they came.
That's it.
All right, so, moving on to address some of the lot, yard, bulk, and height requirements. As per town code, businesses within the business center zoning district shall provide a contiguous landscaped area equal to 5% of the lot, to be planted with shrubs, flowers, rock gardens, ornamental grasses, or other plantings. The site plan currently proposes 19.1% contiguous landscaped area, or approximately 58,939 square feet, which does comply with the requirements of the town code. As per town code, section 301-93C, the minimum non-disturbed transitional yard required to buffer the commercial use with the residential district to the north is 50 feet. The site plan currently proposes parking and lighting improvements within this required buffer area, which does not comply with the town code.
What's your plan with the trees in the north end? We'll leave 'em?
The existing vegetation is proposed to
Existing.
retain.
Remain? Yeah.
But that's not 50 feet?
No, it's not 50 feet, I believe it.
Maybe
No,
it's-
the existing row of trees varies from approximately 10 to 35 feet in width.
But our proposal calls for, no less than 35 feet.
They do propose supplemental plantings in that area, which I will get to. But the fact of the matter is, they still propose parking and lighting within that required non-disturbance buffer. The site is currently over-parked, I believe. Per the square footage and the parking requirements of the town code, it requires 214 stalls. They're proposing 290, so they're proposing 76 more stalls than is required by the code. So if they had to lose, if they don't go to try to go for a variance to keep that, to lose 14
Well, if they
parking.
lose the building, they're gonna be able to.
Well, I
drop
don't know,
the
I
number of
don't think the
spaces.
loss of the building is gonna change the square footage, I think, for the most part. And again, I haven't seen the plans, but I don't think it's a huge
It does
reduction.
reduce it, but it's being reduced to create more parking.
Well, if we learned anything from the Costco development, those people will be here and demand that they get their buffer. So I think you should plan on it.
Yeah. So I brought it up.
Absolutely.
And leave the trees.
Okay? I mean, the property next door has a much lesser buffer than that, but it's been fully treed and
Right,
grown
but
up.
right next door, we also built the Great Wall of Riverhead.
We did. So,
works.
but we can consider, we'll figure that out.
Town code also requires a minimum 6-foot high stockade type fence or equal, with plantings along the northern property boundary. It does give the planning board discretion to modify these requirements if they feel that the desired intent has been achieved, but the site plan does not propose the required fencing along the property.
Wait for the public hearing.
I think the fencing exists there, but if we have to put up a fence against their fence.
I think when I went, I believe
yeah?
it was a chain link fence there.
Yeah.
Town code requires stockade fencing, and also just for noise considerations, being that, you know, the planning board has recently seen applications, with Stop and Shop, where you've got residential properties directly abutting a, you know, major commercial center. There has been noise complaints, so the board may wanna consider if there's any noise attenuation measures that are gonna be required in this area. As I stated, the required parking, they're proposing 76 more spaces more than what's required. But as I stated, they may be required to lose some of those stalls. I guess we can address that when we are provided with redesigned site plans that show the two building layout to see what it actually is gonna lay out to be. They are proposing a new utility sewer easement, across lot number 9 of the Warsaw Park major subdivision. A copy of the easement language must be provided to the planning department and the sewer district, and the legal description of the easement must be provided on a revised site plan. We address the off-street loading, handicap parking and accessibility. The site plan does demonstrate 12 handicapped accessible stalls, which complies with the town code, with 4 of these stalls being located near the fast food restaurant, and 8 handicap accessible stalls near the proposed retail buildings. The site plan indicates that each of the proposed retail buildings will have their own trash enclosure. Site plan indicates opaque fencing as the proposed screening method, but does not provide details of the fencing, i.e. height, material, etc. This information must be included on revised plans. In terms of the building elevations, I do have a copy of the building elevations. For the fast food building, the architectural materials consist of a red brick veneer from the ground level up to approximately 14.5 foot to 14.5 feet, and a light beige ephes system approximately 14.5 feet to 20.5 feet above grade, finished off on the top with a red brick veneer. It also proposes gray canopies along the building. The retail buildings the architectural style consists of a medium gray split-faced concrete block wall, light gray square columns throughout, a light gray ephes border, and a white dry-vit formed fascia. The plan appears to show a parapet wall along certain portions of the elevation. You can see here from the elevations just on the front. It does not continue throughout the rest of the building. The ARB has not seen this design yet. They are scheduled to go before the ARB on the December 18th meeting. At that time, it's recommended the applicant provide color, architecturals, and material samples in order for the ARB to provide comments. And obviously, the planning board would need to see those samples and color elevations as well. So I mean, again, while the board can consider these drawings, the layout of, you know, the revised site plan showing the two building layout and how the buildings are oriented must be provided in order for the planning board to really ascertain the visual impacts. In terms of landscaping, the application does provide a number of landscaping elements throughout the site. On this staff report, I've just attached images of what the proposed vegetation is.
Can we go back to that?
Just-
plan? No, the
landscape. Yep. So I mean, this is the general layout. This might be the best way to present it, cause they do show the landscaping plan, I believe, on 3 cut sheets to show a detailed view. The site plan does propose 24 street trees along the frontage with 58 in Mill Road. There's 24 northern red oaks proposed at a height of 6 to 8 feet all along the street frontage. Site plan proposes 48 flowering Coosa dogwood trees throughout the perimeters of the parking and traffic circulation areas, as well as in landscaped islands throughout the parking lot and around the outdoor seating area for the fast food restaurant.
Red oaks, aren't they the ones that dig up the sidewalks and break up the sidewalks?
That, I'm not sure, I can get additional information on
Yeah,
that.
let's just make sure we're not planting something that's gonna destroy the sidewalks, like on Main Street.
The flowering Coosa dogwoods throughout the site, they're proposed at a height of 8 to 10 feet. The site plan proposes 26 Leland cypress trees along the northern boundary in order to help supplement the existing row of deciduous vegetation. Those are proposed at a height of 5 to 6 feet. There are 30 red spire pear trees proposed throughout the landscaped parking islands and in the vicinity of the proposed buildings. They are proposed at a 2.5 to 3 inch caliper. There's 36 Hicks yew shrubs along the southeast corner of the parking area to screen headlights from the County Route 58 right of way. And there will, as I said, there's also gonna be a retaining wall here, so that will also serve to screen any headlights. 245 blue star juniper shrubs are proposed in the landscaping beds throughout the entirety of the site. Those are proposed at 3 gallon, and the plan also proposes 90 Hollywood junipers installed mainly around the drive aisles throughout the site at a height of 3 to 4 feet. Staff notes that the proposed retail buildings do not include any base plantings in order to soften the appearance of the buildings. There are 2 proposed lawn areas in between the 2 retail buildings. Obviously, that's gonna change with the revised layout, but the board should consider if additional plantings are appropriate in order to soften the visual impact from the 40,000, give or take, 40,000 square foot of new retail development. The site plan does include a note that automatic irrigation sprinkler systems with rain sensors shall be provided. Now, I know this has been a hot topic for the board, water demands as they relate to the Riverhead Water District during peak seasons. I don't know if the board has any comments or recommendations on that, but that is.
I would eliminate the landscaping along the backyards. 2 backyards, they don't need to be watering there, and you could do, rocks or stone. You wouldn't have to water it, you wouldn't have to irrigate it.
You're preaching to the choir on that.
Yeah.
Everybody wants green today and
Well,
and
and 2
everything else.
backyards meeting up and having a green space that has to be maintained, watered, and everything else, I don't know if it makes sense.
Meaning between the
two
major,
industrial
so
parks.
here.
I personally would, I like the layout, I really think it's impressive, but, my only thing is I wish there was more green space on Route 58. And my other question is, I'm surprised you didn't turn the building to face 58, it's almost like the backyard and the side yard.
So understand what we did with that building is to leave the visual for these buildings. Originally, in discussions with fast foods, they all wanted to put their building here. And I guess because of, their stack lanes are very important to them now, because, I don't know, 82% of the food is bought through people eating in their cars. But, so we've said to we said to them, we would prefer that you push this way so that as people are in this intersection, they could see the signage of these buildings and know that they exist. And because of the topography, they are higher than these. So it would work for the center that these are not stuck in the back and nobody knows they're there. That we try to keep them as visually as you
When
can
you're
see.
redoing the next plan, if you can incorporate a little more green space in the front, if you can try, that'd be awesome. Okay.
And just to speak the orientation of the building as it relates to the drive-through queue line, I did do a rough scaling on it. It does look like it provides for approximately 24 cars in the double stack. As Mr. Israel said, I mean, queuing is very important. So 24 cars, it is a pretty good amount. You pass by certain restaurants and they're peak time, and they do seem to be full, so.
Well,
Right, so we were-
there's a lot of space between
This,
where you
this
order
was
and.
a limiting factor, cause that's really the cut of the property. And we had to come in and make this curb, so with the stack lane, this became the viable distance. So if we push the building back, we lose stackability, if that's a word.
So your question on the water demand, that really depends on the comments that we get back from the water district. Correct.
But we would normally put a well here for irrigation anyway, that's kind of
Well,
standard
right.
now.
Yep.
That they don't want that, so we normally put down a well with, an iron remover kind of thing.
Check with the water district first. It's not.
We can't afford the water fees to use
Well,
public
they're
water.
starting to think about smart controllers on the irrigation. All right, which cuts the normal use 25 to 50%, believe it or not. Because it's computer activated and they go off stations, they know when it's raining, look at the soil conditions.
Yeah,
And the timing, amount of water.
the site plan does include a note that it'll incorporate automatic irrigation systems with the rain sensors, so.
Well, that's not rain sensors that he's talking about, they're smart irrigation controllers that are hooked up to the internet. And if there's a half-inch rain forecast tomorrow and your sprinklers are scheduled to come on today, they won't come on. And if you get an inch of rain the next day, they won't come on for 3 or 4 days. So you set them and they kind of
Coordinates
run.
with real life,
Yeah.
yeah.
It controls what goes on.
Just gonna need a teenager to
Right.
set it all up for you.
Just hook it up to the,
It's a Wi-Fi,
that's it.
it's a Wi-Fi connection.
Run by Microsoft, part of the robotics of our world.
Yeah.
We don't know how to drive anymore, we just get in our car and say, go.
But again, the demand on the water district, we need the comments.
So is that something you would consider, the rocks along the, waterless landscaping?
I have nothing against it, I've used Red Rocks through
Yeah, I know
your
you do, they're
entire
good.
town, and we've been subject to, saying, we don't want that anymore, we want mulch and stuff like that.
2 backyards,
I mean, it wouldn't really be visible from either right away,
Right,
screened by
so-
buildings, I mean, who's gonna look at it? People in the office building?
no water, no
People
landscaping.
taking out the garbage, yeah.
Look at it, yard to yard.
Yeah. Alright.
The question was, there was a question asked about cross-access, is there one?
No,
Provided?
right now there's no
There's
proposed
that
cross-access. The
The
way,
other thing that may
the way
happen
the parking
here, Ed,
lots
is
are
there might
oriented,
be a
they have
slope from
parking
here
in,
to there.
these office buildings have
So
parking.
probably Howie was
only
looking
frontage.
just to-
Yeah, they're all
Yeah,
occupied, they're all
just,
backyards.
just a thought,
Yep.
why
Um,
water if you don't have to?
There would be for the construction of the sewer main, there
Yeah.
would be a temporary disruption in the
easement.
parking area for lot number 9, so, temporary construction easement. They do have a secondary access point, I believe they circulate, the traffic circulation
Goes
goes
through
through
to
here.
this building.
So that there would be an alternative access point while they're constructing the.
Do you have a commitment from them already for that easement?
They're willing to do it. The main problem that has happened here is to get across Route 58 at this point,
Mm-hmm.
probably $500,000. And, I'm sure you hear it every day. Again, we put in a sewer. I was lucky enough that when they were doing it, I paid to bring the sewer up Commerce Drive. It really wasn't in the original plans. And now everybody's being forced, and now Route 58 has been widened and widened. So, on Garston Retail, I think, if you saw that work being done in the last 2 or 3 weeks, they jacked the road. I believe the cost was $386,000 just for the jack. So,
So
Going
they're
on.
open to it, that was the real
they're
question.
open to,
The easement.
it's going across my land.
Oh, it's your property?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So the answer is yes.
That makes it easy, yeah.
Makes it a little easier.
Simple answer is yes.
Yes, all right, I didn't understand the question then.
Stormwater as stated, the, site plan currently does propose a ponding and recharge basin in the southeast corner, as well as a number of subsurface stormwater management structures in the northern portion of the property. In this section, I did did speak about the, if the planning board would like to see any sort of guardrail or any sort of protective structure on the road right-of-way side. I think that's, obviously, we'll need to coordinate that with the county, they may have comments on that, being that it fronts on a county road. But I just wanted to get the planning board's opinion if they feel any sort of protective measures are appropriate.
Well, I mean, this is a wall, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And there's gonna be curbing here, so what are we protecting?
Yeah, and there will be some trees there, so. In terms of lighting, there are 3 types of lighting proposed throughout the project site. There are 19 single-head pole-mounted luminaires mounted at a height of 16 feet, 20 dual-head pole-mounted lighting fixtures mounted at a height of 16 feet, and 52 wall-mounted LED light packs mounted at a height of 12 feet. All proposed fixtures are dark sky compliant with a color temperature of 3,000 degrees Kelvin. The average illumination levels, as indicated on the photometric plan, are 1.9 foot candles, which complies with the town code requirements for medium-sized community shopping centers. So signage was the question. Mr. Israel had brought it up. They are proposing I don't know if it's gonna be a directory or a monument sign, but one of the pages on the site plan, I believe it just calls it sign. So there's a sign here, and then there also, as he stated, the sign on the retaining wall. Pursuant to town code, properties are only allowed 1 primary sign. So a little bit more clarification is needed, because based on this, it appears that there are 2 primary signs. I think that just needs to be addressed.
It's a wall sign. It's not a wall. I don't know, we kinda just thought about it that after Howie had created this, I said, well, it would be useful to use this as signage. It would kinda be pretty for the thing, but people heading east will never see this sign. So, we figured out we're gonna need some kind of something there.
If it's, considered a wall, ARB has the discretion to authorize secondary signs. Traditionally, those have been on buildings. I don't know that we've ever seen sort of, whichever way you cut it, that's shouting out the name of the shopping center, the name of the development, and then you've also got a sign here. I would consider them 2 primary signs. I don't know if it's something that needs an interpretation for the
Would
zoning.
this sign be for the back use and this sign be for the restaurant?
We haven't been that thoughtful about it.
Okay.
It's just, this sign is, or this wall
Yeah.
is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 feet long. And it really is very visible because of the height. So whether this just says, Cauliflower Park, and this says some tenancy, or whether, eventually, I figured what was good about the elevation of the buildings is that the wall of the buildings could actually then have a signage if it's, Johnson & Johnson or whatever, which would be visible. So I kinda looked at this to say, hey, it's a great place to put some signage because it's so visible. If it just becomes a wall, it'll be a wall, or whether it becomes the sign for the park, but I don't see this thing being named some particular center. So I thought that if I gave each tenant, 6 or 8 feet along the wall, it would help, A, decorate it, and B, be that thing that people go, oh yeah, no, I need to turn here now to go to Johnson & Johnson. So, the problem again is if you're at the intersection, you see that.
Yeah, well, if each tenant, if you're gonna have each tenant's name spelled out across there, I would think that's a directory sign, which would qualify that as the primary sign.
Again, it's something that I don't think anybody ever had this particular structure happening.
We'll let
So,
ARB weigh in.
Yeah, well, they all be.
What's the fast food company want? That wants to
The
come
what?
in? What does the fast food company want to come in?
Try to give them more.
I have no idea.
More green? A little bit. Yeah, if you can.
We did get some comments from the town engineer, in a letter dated October 21st. He noted the need for a stormwater pollution prevention plan. He spoke about infiltration testing per hydrologic soil groups. He had some technical details about leaching structures, cut and fill calculations, general engineering comments, which the applicant will need to address in revised plans. The parcel is located within the Riverhead Water District, extension number 11. Again, referrals to the Water District and coordination for comments will be handled through the secret process, as will Suffolk County Planning Commission, Suffolk County Department of Public Works. The applicant does need to submit a fire marshal plan as per the site plan checklist, which is basically just a pared down version that just shows road opening widths, types of construction for buildings, locations of fire sprinklers, fire access, that sort of stuff. I did receive a title report from the applicant, and the town attorney found it to be in conformance with the requirements of the town code and did not find any restrictive easements on the property. And again, they are scheduled to go to the ARB on December 18th, and their recommendation and comments at that point will be referred back to the planning board once they're received.
So, after those comments and the revision, I guess we'll see you back here at another work session.
Absolutely. Yeah, we just wanted to process this.
Yeah.
And again, we do have a secret resolution on here classifying as a type 1 and initiating the coordinated review. Again, I'm confident that the revised layout of the buildings, 2 versus 3, I don't think is substantive enough to prevent the referrals from going out. So we will send them out to involved agencies and get their comments back, and as I said, come back for the next work session once we get them.
Okay.
Good job, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, next item, Villas at Roanoke. Discussion of a sketch plan.
How we doing, guys?
I'm back.
Not going very long. Jerry. Jerry. Come up, Jerry.
I kept it warm for you.
It's already warmed up for you. That's it. That's about it.
Yeah, so these are sketch
November
plans.
19th,
Yeah,
right?
we have not seen
Oh,
them.
it's okay.
Could you just pass that back to Carissa,
Sketch
please?
plans, A, B, and C.
Same one I have.
Yeah. All right, so the planning department has received and reviewed 3 sketch plans which have been submitted in furtherance of a 13-lot major subdivision, which is proposing to utilize transfer of development rights to increase the as-of-right development potential of the subject parcel. Brief history on the application. The Riverhead Planning Board has approved 2 resolutions regarding the current subdivision application. Resolution number 19-46 dated June 6, 2019, which approved a 6-lot as-of-right development potential of the subject property, as identified on a yield map prepared by Howie Young, dated October 29, 2018. And the planning board also passed resolution number 19-107, dated November 7, 2019, which approved an increased development yield of 13 lots, as identified on a TDR yield map prepared by Howard Young, dated October 10, 2019. That 13-lot development potential is predicated upon the applicant acquiring and redeeming 7 transfer of development rights to increase the as-of-right development yield. Subject parcel is located on the south side of Sound Shore Road in Jamesport, and is split zoned with the northern 475 feet of the property located within the RA 40 zoning district, and the remainder of the property located in the RA 80 zoning district. Character of the surrounding area is predominantly residential and rural. The northern side of Sound Shore Road in the vicinity of the subject parcel is entirely residential, and there's a number of single-family residences located across a private right-of-way to the east. The Suffolk County North Fork Preserve is located to the west of the subject parcel, and there is farmland located farther to the south. In regards to the specific sketch plans that the applicant has provided, I've kind of characterized the proposed designs as follows. You have sketch plan A, which is the first plan in the packet. This sketch plan presents an as-of-right accounting for the TDR's development plan, with no clustering. Lot sizes in this sketch plan range from 20,008 square feet through 42,899 square feet, with the average lot size being 30,766.
The applicant would prefer this particular plan. It doesn't show clustering, but what we would propose is that each of the lots would have a covenant on it, so that we could end up having an open space area on every lot. Bigger lots, the layout is better than layouts of the other two maps.
So we should look at the other two maps?
Yeah.
So the one thing with that is when you start getting into individually covenanted open spaces on private lots, it becomes very difficult to police and enforce. And frankly, we've seen some other applications, I've been involved in interactions where people clear their land, and unless someone brings it to our attention, we're never gonna know about it.
But they use it.
Yeah. So again, this does not, the sketch plan A does not identify any clustering or open space. Now, sketch plan B
He
is
doesn't
what.
want us to look at that.
Well, we're gonna, entertain me. So sketch plan B presents what I called a medium clustered development proposal with lot sizes ranging from 13,384 square feet through 34,820 square feet, with the average lot size being 21,926 square feet. This plan proposes 3.51 acres of open space, which wraps around the perimeter of the site. It also proposes a recharge basin located in the open space area, which is located within 150 feet of a wetland. This plan specifically calls for a number of flag lots on lot numbers 9, 10, and 11. So you've got this odd guy right there, and then you've got two flag lots serving these guys. That wouldn't really be desirable. It seems like it's just a layout to satisfy the sketch requirements, which I understand. And then we move to sketch plan C. So this sketch plan represents a tighter clustered development with lot sizes ranging from 18,232 square feet through 27,501 square feet, the average lot size being 19,630 square feet. This plan would allow for the preservation of 3.93 acres of open space. And in staff's recommendation of the three sketch plans that have been designed, that seems to be the most appropriate configuration, as it preserves the most open space, and all lots would have frontage on the proposed roadway as opposed to flag lots. Now, the reason why the first sketch plan, while it may be desired by the applicant, I don't think the planning board could approve it, because clustering of the subdivision is required within RA 80, RB 80, and APZ zoning districts. Now, this parcel is split zoned. You have approximately 6.6 acres of the parcel located in the RA 80, which does require the clustering. So being that it's split zoned, it kind of makes the calculations tricky on how much to preserve, where that lot's gonna be preserved. But based on Town Code Section 301-296F, states that in the event that the planning board approves a cluster plat that preserves less than 70% of the prime agricultural soils, the reasons supporting such decision shall be set forth within the resolution approving the preliminary plat. The planning board shall not approve a cluster subdivision plat with less than 50% of the area being preserved as prime soils or agricultural open space. So just using that 50% as a baseline, if you look at the assessment of the property where 6.6 acres is in a zoning district which requires clustering, sketch plan C would preserve 3.93 acres, which is approximately 59% of the land within that required clustered area. So sketch plan C does seem to meet the requirements of the clustered subdivision, as well as is just best recommended overall general layout of the proposed subdivision.
Has the soil conservation, where they characterize all the soils in the town, is there a report on what we have here, because it's all trees? I don't know whether they have prime agricultural soils or not.
I did, in one of my prior staff reports, I did characterize the soils. I don't have my staff report readily available, but yes, I did there are what's identified as prime agricultural soils on the property.
Okay.
Again, I can reaffirm that with the board and send it out, the information.
No, because that's the basis of
Yeah.
of the cluster.
Yeah, to preserve soils and.
One other thing though, before we go on, under the workforce housing, the affordable workforce housing state law, we want to build an affordable housing site. That would give us a density bonus, so that we could have an additional lot. And so we could end up with at least 13 lots, if not 14 lots, with the density bonus. So what we would like to do is to take a map, bring it back to you, to show you that density bonus and the additional lot, the workforce housing lot. It makes a difference to us how many lots we get.
Well, and so this is something, it's a bit of a quagmire, because the way the Long Island Workforce Housing Act reads, there's something in here. When a local government approves a subdivision plat or site plan for 5 or more residential units, or a mixed-use development that incorporates 5 or more residential units, except as otherwise noted in subdivision 2 of this section, the applicant shall receive a density bonus or other incentive pursuant to a written agreement between the applicant and the local government. In looking through the town code, the town of Riverhead has never codified anything as it relates to this density bonus agreement.
Well, who's that agreement from?
Well, that,
This is
This-
the state
New
code.
York State.
Yeah, it's New York State Affordable Housing.
so it states that there needs to be a written agreement between the local government, which would be the town board.
So they have to go to them for special permit?
It's not a special permit, but it's something that the town board needs to undertake, and we need to, and this kind of brought to the forefront, that there needs to be something in the code which references the Long Island Workforce Housing Act, because as of right now, there is no agreed upon density bonus.
And with the density bonus, then they have to have several of the lots aside for.
So yeah, if they set
Low
aside,
income.
they would set aside
Yeah.
10% of such units.
10% is the number.
1.4.
Hopefully going to 1 and 1, but that's what we're gonna do.
So if that's your desire to add a lot to this,
Mhm.
and you need an agreement with the town board,
Then we could do that, that's right.
why is this being presented as an option today?
Because we had gone through this several times and discussed it, and the map that was drawn up before we got to that stage as to whether we would consider that. And so these maps are the ones that we have. We were saying to you, what we wanna do is add to it. And I understand that that's what we have to do.
I'm assuming that's 14, yeah.
Yeah, it would be, and I mean, without, the calculation, even though that would take away the open space, even if it was a half-acre lot here, or, a little bit shy, that would still preserve.
Lots will get smaller, that's it.
Well, I mean, there's enough, in sketch plan C, there would be enough here
Yeah.
that they could carve it out.
They can make each of the lots smaller. and
They could
still
do
keep
that,
the
and I
open
mean,
space.
it would still appear to satisfy the clustering requirements, because there would probably still be about 3.2 or 3.3 acres of open space.
Can I just interject? There's two kind of simultaneous problems going on here. One is the design of the lots, the way the planning board likes it. The other is the calculation of how many TDRs they need to buy to get to the number of lots that they have. They have 6 as of right, and that's been established. If they want to show on a map, which I'm hearing the applicant say, that this lot, this extra lot we're showing will be for design purposes, but not included in the TDR calculation, or how many TDRs they have to buy, that's sort of the first step. Then there's the second step of, can they get a density bonus from the town board by a written agreement? Charles and I have been talking about this, and we sort of agree, but
shades of how we understand it. But, I do believe that they could show they could show a 10%, which would be one affordable unit that would not require any density bonus. And the problem they run into there is that it gives them three options: an affordable house, build an affordable house on some other land, or give money to the town that can go to an affordable housing program. Since the town hasn't made that decision, they're back to the town board to ask them that question, which of those three they want to do. Then the second iteration is, are they going to ask for a density bonus by this written agreement, which would kind of dovetail back to that question, okay, give us money to put to a fund, give us money for 2 homes, so you get a bonus of 1 more home, that sort of thing would be what would play out there. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a sketch plan. What plan does the board like? And how does it look to you from a planning standpoint? And then it's gonna be a sort of a lawyer argument about how many TDRs they have to buy to accomplish that plan. So that,
That 14 sounds extremely convoluted and difficult to achieve, and time-consuming as well. But you're also saying that if they get 14, they still only need 7. They would not need 8.
Wait, now
That's the density bonus, right?
But, so, they're entitled to 6.
Yeah.
They can buy TDRs, and I think at the moment they were contemplating buying 8 TDRs, which would get them to 14, and they'd lose 1 and have 13 actual lots. Because if you don't build an affordable house, the way you opt out of the the state law is you lose that lot. So they can't not buy a lot and say, well, I lost the one I didn't buy. That's clearly a chameleon, a chimera, I should say.
Well,
Smoke and mirrors.
I believe when.
So the resolution says they had to make an election. So I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, so when this plan initially came in, they had the 6-lot as of right development, which the board approved. Then they came in with a 14-lot TDR map, which was predicated upon 8 TDRs. That was when we had comments from Vinnie Gaudiello about the drainage, that they weren't showing the recharge basin, and without doing those drainage calculations, at that point, the applicant said, all right, we'll do 13 lots predicated upon 7 TDRs. You get 6 plus 7, that's how you get to your 13. I believe I think, Mr. Barry, your question was, if they elect to do it on site, 13 is their TDR, I don't wanna say as of right, but their TDR density that they're allowed. If they get a density bonus, they would not have to buy a TDR for that increased density bonus. That would be granted through the written agreement.
And then the question is, it sounds like they may not have to do that. They could buy something or contribute to some low-income housing somewhere else and still go with 13. Is that right?
Yeah, right now, our preference is to actually build on the site for workforce housing.
14. We haven't seen 14.
No, I know, but and as I
Has the
understand, the
3
chairman
plans of
saying to
14.
me, when are you gonna show this? This has only come up very recently, that's why.
I'm just amazed how clever you guys are. I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just, we're going round and round with this stuff, and I understand that you may be selling the development rights, and you wanna maximize your investment, and clearing a heavily wooded lot, and
So, I got a question. So on the, preservation part, so on Plan A that you don't like, so if we took Plan A and some of them lots are 41,000 square feet, so we don't need to really go up all the way to the south on that whole back piece. So what about if we wrapped a 20-foot buffer, to the north? No,
To the south.
I'm sorry. If we took a 20-foot buffer on the east and west part of the property, and then on the back part, we get a 25 or 30-foot buffer on the other lots way up top, I think we'd come close to the number you need, but the lots would be symmetrical, the subdivision would be symmetrical, the housing wouldn't be on top of each other. You're looking to put up a nice home, keep the community values, where the rest, right on the other side here, these homes are all beautiful, so you want us to put a postage stamp here, and these are all acre and a half lots here. So I'm just trying to keep everybody happy. You're right, our intent was to go to the county, but this is something that is, the lots.
That's
they're-
valuable, more valuable both ways.
Yeah,
you know.
this brings a nicer home, easy to work with. You can still do a buffer that you're looking for to get that buffer, amount of land in the project. But it's conducive to the neighborhood, and, you know, these people spent a lot of money up there, you know? I don't wanna cluster it like it's in the middle of a farm field where, you know, trying to get away from that. And that's what those other lots are gonna do. They're all gonna be like, you know, Soundview Road, it's just your roofs and siding, you know, as you drive by.
You wanna come
Try to-
back with 3 more plans, right?
Charlie, with,
14.
with Plan A, could we, if we did that and you guys accepted some form of what Pete was just talking about, and we bought the 7 TDRs and made the first lot workforce housing, is that something that is doable, Greg? I mean, does that?
Well, so the problem with sketch plan A is that it doesn't show any clustering, and clustering is required for 6.6 acres of the 11 acres. So you have to cluster at some point. I mean, if it was if it was a 6-lot subdivision, it would probably be more easily accomplished, but you're proposing to increase the density, which is gonna inherently reduce the amount of open space that you could really have. So I mean, if you would have to submit a plan which would show, by my calculations, the minimum which the board could approve, 3.3 acres of open space. Now, I don't know if.
That they can do, they can show that.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if, you know, and again, I don't know if open space, I don't know if private easements on private property where someone could go in and clear and, you know, that stuff is very difficult to enforce when it's on someone's property, because we're not going out and knocking on people's back doors to see if they're chopped down a couple of trees. So I mean,
But we could still do the buffer off the property lines, and whether the town wants it or whatever, but.
Be dedicated to the town?
I'm just trying to make it so that these lots
That'll never
stay
take.
somewhat of value. I mean, you know our intent, we've gone through this like 8 months. Our intent is to preserve this if we can. So you're trying to knock it down. It just, you know, we wanna preserve it if possible. That's our goal here. You know, it's not really to put a postage
Not
stamp lots
necessarily
and
your
build
goal,
houses.
it's what's
That's
required
really
by
what we wanted
the
to do.
code,
We told you that from the day when we came in here. We really wanna try to preserve it. We live here, all of us do.
You have to preserve it.
Yeah.
In the code, you gotta
I mean,
preserve it.
No, we're trying to
He
preserve the
means-
whole
he means
place.
the whole piece.
We're trying to preserve the whole place. We'd rather leave it open space, the whole piece, and everybody's happy. And we feel like, you know, we did on 4 or 5 other projects in Riverhead, you know, it's worked for us.
No, but our dilemma is that we consider that you're developing this.
Yeah.
And
But you
if
could shoot
things
it
fall
down.
apart with the county,
But you could shoot it down, we get to the preliminary stage, you don't like where it's going, we look at it again. you
Well,
know?
so the question has come up, at what stage do you need to get to, if the goal is to sell it to the county, what stage do you need to get to? Because the further like, the planning board is being asked to approve a sketch plan, which would dictate the layout of the proposed site. The further you get down the road, you get to the point where it's preliminary, you'll need to do full engineering on it, like full SWIP design. So I mean, where's the threshold that you can go to the county and say, look, here is our assessment, here's the number of lots we can get, here's what the value, you know, a workforce housing lot, what do you need to do to get to the county for them to actually entertain?
Do you need to do all the engineering before you go?
No, I think,
we did
you
on the
know,
other
they're
one.
gonna do an appraisal based
We
on,
did.
Roanoke, we went.
you know.
Yeah, but if you don't have to.
That was a question I had asked you specifically. You said, at what point do you have to get to in order to sell this to the county, this whole thing?
Probably the answer is preliminary. I think, and that's what we did
It's,
last
you know,
time.
Get
the
preliminary
problem,
appro-
the
you have to
problem
have preliminary approved.
as Stan is saying, is if we approve it, then you can do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't, it can't
Right,
work
if
both
he
ways.
pays his TDRs and he has a right, he has a right.
Well, there's still a question on how many
Yeah,
TDRs
I
you have
mean,
to pay for
right,
that extra lot.
I get where you're going now, and I
Go to the
think,
county, you don't have to
I
drive
understand it. These lots would just get smaller,
Correct.
you know, and it would be better.
yards.
It would actually be a better layout, and you would have, you know,
That's just.
remember
this
that
lot that we
in
get.
C, which I think we're leaning
That's why,
towards,
so we think we get.
these are the larger lots in the front.
Yeah.
You know, these are all, you know, less than a half acre except for this
And the
one.
topo starts going up.
And what would happen with the open space with C, which is the one you're leaning towards?
Well, I mean, this layout is good, but if you're going to do this, you can adjust all of these, and then what you're proposing, I'm assuming, is,
That's right.
Correct.
That's correct.
you know, is doing that. And then, you know, so these lots get smaller, but they're all over 40,000 feet anyway, you know, instead of being 18,000.
Or 18 or 19.
Right.
That's a
You
difference.
know, I mean, I would say redo this and come back and take a look at it. I mean,
Gotta give
that's
us
just
three
my
months.
opinion.
We'll give
Show
you
it
the extra
14.
lots.
Mr. Cuddy, can't you and Mr. Ellis work out legally what you can get and bring us a map back to,
We've talked a little bit this before.
Okay.
Yes,
try to help if we can, but we don't know.
that's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, we're all trying to get to the same finish line, it's how do we get there?
Okay.
Well,
Thank you
this-
for taking the time.
I just wanna get an answer to that. The town board right now is leaning, planning board is leaning towards C. That's what I heard. Greg, like,
Well, I mean, that was my recommendation, not necessarily the
recommendation.
recommendation of the
What
planning
would,
board, but-
what would you recommend as far as what, you suggested maybe the town would take all this open space, would the town be open to
No.
taking that?
No.
I
Town-
didn't think
town
so.
wouldn't take it.
So then this map lends itself to an HOA, which is disaster.
In keeping what you said, we can work on that. We can work on this map and try and, try and make it work. Yep, we can.
No disturb on it.
That's a win-win, I think.
I did a subdivision that we actually sold to the county in Wading River, across from Zumis's model. It was 54 lots. And what they suggested, what the map showed was a border fence, like a, split rail fence, right around the bordered
We
area.
did that in Old Orchard.
Old Orchard, exactly.
And, you know, that kinda lets everybody know, this is the end of the
We
line.
did a chain link in Old Orchard,
Yeah,
with no breaks in it, no
I-
gates or anything.
I
Yeah.
remember,
Remember that?
yeah. Yes, I do. So, okay,
It's your
I don't know if
application,
I'd like
come in
to
with
do
the
it.
ideas, and we're gonna look at them.
okay, thank
But
you.
get the legal answers.
Yep, I-
first.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, we go back up to the public hearings.
Going up?
Yep. Put that back up here. Okay, we're up to the public hearings on the agenda. The first public hearing is for Central Square at Wading River. Karen, could we, maybe a little to the side on that so we could see?
Oh, sorry. Go this way?
I think nobody's really looking at it right now, so maybe back towards the tree. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Pete Danowski, I represent the applicant here. This board is fully familiar with this particular application in that you have previously approved the site plan for this project. By way of history, for anyone that's not familiar, this board approved a final site plan, and that site plan expired by a code provision after one extension of 1 year after an initial 3-year period. So 4 years went by with regard to the approved plan. What has to be specifically noted is that as a condition of granting the final approval, your board made it a specific condition that a grant of scenic easement be granted to the town of Riverhead. And your conditions made this grant of scenic easement be given before the final site plan map would be signed. As a result of that, my client, in cooperation with the town and as a condition of your approval, has sterilized the back part of this property, over half of the property. In addition, we filed covenants with the county clerk that again were conditions of the final approval before you would sign the map. Still further, one of the covenants and conditions was granting a cross-access easement to the neighboring property by way of agreement. So when the 4-year period was about to expire, I had requested a further extension, and I pointed out a comparison with subdivision maps where the state law was changed, and it permits you in your discretion to continue to grant extensions on subdivision maps. You have that discretion. In site plans, the town code adopted a provision that said we had to apply for and gain building permits. Now, I would suggest that no one in the future is going to give grants of scenic easements or file these covenants which give up rights to properties if in fact at a later time they could expire without relief. So in October of 2018, over a year ago, I forwarded a letter to the town and to the town planning board asking that they consider the factors of the grant of scenic easement and the covenants that were filed, and said there is an easy comparison to subdivisions and you should grant a further extension. That request was not granted. I then delivered a $30,000 final site plan application reapproval check to the town, and I asked that the very same plan which I submitted with a new application be reapproved. I thought in a matter of months, since we're asking for no changes, that I would have gained the reapproval permission by way of resolution from this board. However, it's been a year, and we now had attended work sessions with the planning board, and we had received a planning staff list of comments, some of which were comments pointing out that the town code had been amended with regard to parking, and also pointing out that there was a desire for a change in the specifications of the lighting to provide LED lighting on the plan. My client considered those comments and resubmitted the plan with those modifications. We stand before you now because the board authorized my forwarding of notices of a public hearing based upon an amended plan that addressed the original staff reports with regard to these issues. I would point out that, consistent with an earlier discussion before the public hearing was started, that on November 27th, after the public hearing notices went out and after we had submitted the Marty Sanluski revised plan with those comments addressing parking and lighting, we received another comment from planning staff, to which within a relatively short period of time, November 27th to today, we responded back with a small minor modification addressing some of the additional November 27th comments. So I'm asking this board to promptly reapprove the final map, final site plan as now depicted, with whatever minor conditions could be pointed out by way of small revisions. We've delivered the final application fee, I would ask you to close the public hearing after hearing public comment and authorize the forwarding of a resolution of approval of the final site plan. I would also point out that, consistent with your earlier resolution, I'm looking for no changes here. Your earlier resolution said before we got a building permit, we would have to get a DOT permit. Similarly, the same kind of condition could be put on the resolution of reapproval. My only comment.
So, I mean, thank you for the history, but could you talk about the project a little bit?
I can. These are a series of buildings that were laid out in a fashion consistent with the town's desires to no longer have big box buildings. They were limited in size, and they were provided by way of a cluster, recognizing that the back area was desirous of being protected as open space. We also created some access paths that considered neighboring developments around us. That includes the Hamlet Center Office Park across the street. There's a neighboring farmer across the way as well. And so we laid this out consistent with the master plan comments along Route 25A in Wading River. And we feel this is a use and a layout in a well-designed landscaped area. It is next to, for lack of a better word, the Sirota Shopping Center, next to the CVS store. So by way of location, there's already a retail shopping center next to us. And as you know, behind us is protected protected areas of woodland, so it makes sense to tie the back area of our land by way of open space to other open space out the back. So again, well-designed, a lot of comments from planning staff and planning board when the original approval was granted, a lot of give and take about how to lay it out, and Mr. Senluski designed it, laid it out, and your board approved the plan. I was looking for no changes. The only small changes are needed by agreement based upon staff comments on town code provisions.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Nope. I think we did it all an hour ago.
Anyone from the public have any comments or questions? Anyone from the public? Just come up to the podium and please just state your name.
My name is John Kinsella. I own the property directly across the street from this proposed development. And I just had a question regarding the note that refers to roadway improvements. They refer to another drawing. And I was just wondering if any of these improvements were going to be spilling over onto private property, or would they remain on the existing, state right-of-way? I think the drawing they referred to wasn't in the package that I looked at.
Can you answer that, Mr. Zanowski? No, I don't either, but it should come from.
We intend to do no improvements beyond our property other than what may ultimately be decided by the state DOT at the building permit stage. But it's certainly not our desire to touch anybody else's property, by way of voluntary action on our part.
So the plan or the page that was missing that Mr. Kinsella referred to, is that in the, attached to the back? It's not?
I don't have that.
You don't have it? Okay.
And I'm not sure.
But you're telling us today that
We're gonna do
no
whatever the
impact.
DOT requires to do on a state highway. What we've asked to do is improvements within our property. We're not looking to affect Mr. Kingella's property. I don't think I have the right to do that. I have certainly, can get my arm twisted by the state DOT as to what they wanna see, but I can't take his property away or touch his property without his permission.
Okay.
And I just have one other comment regarding the addition of another traffic light on Route 25A. I feel that's going to encourage more traffic to use North Country Road as a bypass. Where North Country Road is on the north side of my farm, and that's already being you know, used as a bypass, and people are abusing the speed limit, so I just feel that's gonna get worse. So I just wanted to mention that, and
You're probably right, Ms. Gonzala, but that's a state road, and it's not really in our authority to put a light or not put a light. That's
right, but the result of putting a light, what I'm trying to say, is gonna create a problem for one of your other roads, which I use.
I agree with you, but this board doesn't have a choice in the matter. It's a state road, and they designate where there'll be lights or not.
Right, I'm not
Yeah.
objecting to a light. But, you know, if it does create a problem on additional roads, then, you know, I just want the town to be aware of that, and if there's anything they can do to address that problem, would be appreciated.
Okay.
Since I use North Country Road, you know, to access my property and conduct my business, so. That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay.
I'll move we close, the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to close the public hearing for Central Square at Wading River. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is closed.
Because Peter was talking about going straight to an approval, so typically we would go to a preliminary approval first. So I just wanted to make sure that that's what we're doing.
Well, he's gotta submit something to you for review, or you gotta review
Well,
it,
he gave me
submit-
something to review.
You gotta review that first.
But the next step would be to write up a preliminary.
Preliminary, we have to do that by procedure, right, Dick?
I'm not sure, I'd like to look at that first. If we could just, could we look
Yeah.
into that and advise you?
Okay.
If that would be all right. I'm sitting here, I just can't tell you that answer.
I would just close the hearing, and you heard my comments, my request. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
And just one more thing, I think I might have misspoken when I was talking about the project before. The letter that the deputy town attorney had written to the Pine Barrens Commission, memorializing that discussion with the executive director, that was that the town would have the jurisdiction over the DRS. I think I might have flip-flopped that, so I just wanted to
Right,
make
but
that clear.
we never got, the
Right,
town
we
never got comments back.
It asked to get a comment back within 10 days, and we never got a comment back.
And we have it now.
Well, we got a letter from the Pine Barrens Commission, October 27th, I believe it was, and they wanted more information from the applicant about whether it was a development of regional significance.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next public hearing, John Kajowski and Sons minor subdivision.
Good evening. My name is Richard Lark. I represent the applicant, John P. Kowski and Sons, Inc., on this subdivision map. Just by a little background history, the development rights on the subdivision map on the both lots being proposed are long gone. They were one of the original development rights sold to the county back in 1978. And that's when the Kajowskis purchased the property in two separate transactions. They bought these were their two initial acquisitions on their own after their father had passed away earlier in the 70s. In the spring of 2018, the consideration in the family was that they were going to start trying to figure out how to wind down the farming and do some of their own personal estate planning. And they discussed, because of the covenants and restrictions, went to the Suffolk County Farmland Committee, explained what they had in mind, and after meeting with them, the committee approved this proposed subdivision, which you have before you tonight, and it was subject to getting approval for subdivision approval under the Town of Riverhead regulations. That occurred back in June of 18, and then the application was filed finally with the Town of Riverhead in November of that year, and the staff has been very, very cooperative moving it along. The only reason it's so late, a year later, is only because of problems we had getting the surveyor to conform to all the updated regulations, not only which are gonna be required by the county, but are now currently required by the planning board and the town of Riverhead. So we finally got that squared away, and we moved it along, and whatever questions that they raised, where they were by the planning staff, we answered, and I think we're pretty much ready to get final approval from you so that we can move on, and then we'll have to go back and file everything with the county planning farmland committee, because it is in the APZ zone, so they do really, due to the original covenants that were put on there by John. That was back in the days of John Klein, believe it or not, when these things were all put on. So we have to conform to all of that. And so basically, there's gonna be no change. This next year, for sure, we'll be farming on the property, and probably in the following year. But like everything, it might not be by the Kachowskis, but on the other hand, it will be farmed because it can't be developed and because of the covenants and restrictions. So what you see is what you get. That's what's gonna exist there, okay?
Yeah, I just had a question. We had our work session, because a lot of times, we run into many questions as to what uses are allowed when the development rights are sold. And often, the farmland committee refers it back to the planning board, and we have to make a decision on what the intent was when it was preserved years ago and what may or may not be allowed. So I think, it was pretty open back when the development rights were sold, many years ago.
The original ones were a little loose and goosey,
Right.
yes, that's correct.
So, I just, being that you're splitting the property, at the time, when we asked the question, we didn't know if how that would impact, two parcels instead of one. But you've said tonight that there's no intention to do any development, although
No.
Agricultural use is allowed, we understand that.
That's what's gonna happen.
So there's no desire to put a farmhouse up or anything if
No,
they split it?
no,
Okay.
no. The northerly lot's gonna go to John and Susan, his wife, and they're very contented with it for their old age because it surrounds their house, and we deeded over to Riverhead the sump area there, so that whole area will remain exactly the same, and they're not moving, and so therefore he plans on doing some minor farming with his son, and so it'll continue as long as he's alive. It'll remain just as the way it is. The other one we're leaving in the corporation right now because the corporation will farm it next year. Now, whether they lease it out, D'Elia expressed an interest that he might want to rent it for, growing sod. But other than that, any offers or any subject that ever come up, talking to anybody, it's always been for an agricultural use. And that southerly portion has its own barn and storage areas on it. So everything is fit to go for a farm right then and there. So somebody buying it or doing anything with it, other than the Kachowskis, it's gonna stay as a farm. That's the way it is.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? No. Public have any comments or questions? No?
I move we close the public hearing on John Kowski and Sons minor subdivision, so moved.
Okay, motion made and seconded to close the public hearing for, John Kachowski minor subdivision. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Thank you, you're welcome. Okay, we're up to the resolutions. Is there any public comment on the resolutions before we bring them up? Any public comment on resolutions? Okay,
I'll move resolution 114, Ruggiero seasonal edition. Change of use of a single-family house to an accessory storage and construction of an additional parking area. So moved.
Second the motion?
motion made and seconded to approve resolution 114 for Ruggiero seasonal edition final site plan approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Resolution's approved.
I'll move resolution number 115, approve the 22 as-of-right development yield map for Old Orchard Riverhead.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve resolution 115, Old Orchard at Riverhead for a yield map. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Resolution's approved. 116.
Move resolution number 116 for the Long Island Cauliflower Association Retail Center, determining the type 1 action. So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve Resolution 116, Long Island Cauliflower Association as a type 1 action. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Resolution's approved. Is there any public comment on any matter tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Barbara Blass. I live in Jamesport. I've been following with great interest the development of land-based commercial solar energy production facilities. We know them as solar farms here in Riverhead.
Could you speak a little louder, please?
Of course, yes. Can you hear me now?
Better.
Okay. I've read all the information on the town's website on S-Power 1, the DEIS and the FEIS, and the supplemental FEIS, as well as the information and communication from the town and others on the S-Power 2 application, which is before the State Siting Board. As I'm sure you know, the town has received yet another application for a special permit and site plan from NextEra, a 22.9 megawatt solar facility on 197 acres, which would put the total number of acres devoted to solar at over 600, all within the 11933 zip code. And that's a whole other discussion for another time.
Does that number include the one on Main Road in Calverton?
On the main road, I think it does.
Okay.
I think it does. Unlike S-Power 1, where you as lead agency issued a positive declaration, the town board as lead agency on NextEra was poised to issue a neg deck at a special town board meeting on November 13th. I and several members of the community expressed some concerns about the resolution and had questions about the project. There was not a lot of information available to the public at that time, and the members of the board realized that not all of the information had been made available to them either, and consequently, the resolution was tabled. Additional comments and questions were entered into the public record at the November 18th town board meeting, and it's with regard to the applicant's responses to those questions that I'm here tonight. But those responses are on the website as well if you choose to read them. The applicant provided information on the procedural background of the project and included the following statement, quote, Long Island Solar, which we know as NextEra, has had multiple sessions with the town of Riverhead in which feedback has been incorporated into the permit package. They indicated that they met with planning staff in person on March 7th of 2018, and then again with planning staff in person on June 6th of 2018. So my question is that the timing would suggest that the town was aware of the NextEra application during the time it commenced the preparation of the supplemental on S-Power 1, which was in October. So I'm wondering why it was not included in the cumulative analysis. Ironically, and if I understand it correctly, that supplemental EIS was necessary because the town became aware that S-Power 1 didn't disclose information about S-Power 2, which it was aware of at that time. So even the town's comments on S-Power 2 that went to the state, which was also during the same period, didn't include information about the NextEra project. So I'm just wondering how you could discuss the potential cumulative impacts. How were they adequately assessed if the analysis didn't include the project that's on the neighboring 197 acres? I just don't know what that means going forward.
Well, you bring up a very good question. Obviously, it's too late because it's built already, right? The S-Power 1. But your question of the timing, this board certainly wasn't aware of whether or not the planning staff had the application for NextEra at that time, and I would ask that question to planning staff, the timing of this. I mean, that raises a very significant question. I think everybody knows how I felt when S-Power was in front of us and you know, the timing of their application for the Article 10 project, which led to the positive declaration. So, I mean, this is, to me, it's troubling with what these solar companies are doing to us. And And I'm very interested in knowing the timing of this, and whether or not the planning staff had that application in hand when that review was going on for S-Power 1. I can't answer that question as I sit here today, but it's a very good question.
They'll never reveal it either.
And I just
Planning
wonder
staff?
if it has implications with the pending S-Power 2 application as well, because I think they're required in that, in the most recent stipulations that were submitted, again, it's all on the website, they're also required to study all potential and neighboring approved projects and those that are in the pipeline. So I just wonder how our own analysis didn't incorporate it, so. I just wanted to bring it to your attention because it was troubling.
When they were in front of us, and I was made aware of how the other application timing felt, I used the words willful deceit. And again, if what you're saying is confirmed, I'm gonna use them again. And I think we really need to look into this further, because it's disturbing. It's very disturbing how these solar companies are coming in here and doing this to the town. And I really, I'm sure the board wants to know too, the timing of
I
these
agree.
applications.
We were kind of blindsided because I had asked specifically, do you have any other applications? And I was told no, and then there was.
And I know that must have been very troubling, but this actually said that they met with the town.
Well, I think the town has put a.
That's what's on the website
has
anyway,
halted everything
according to
pretty
the
much right now on solar development.
Yeah, but it's
you know.
really,
There's been no moratoriums, and I can speak a little bit to this. During the S-Power 1 project, where the planning board issued a positive declaration, we went through a long, full, EIS process, DEIS, FEIS, through a supplemental. I think it is important, if the planning board would have issued another positive declaration for this project, I don't think it would have gotten into the town board, because it raises a question of how much of this land does the town board, and is the town really willing to dedicate to this solar? The planning board does not write legislation. Planning board cannot approve uses. They cannot issue special permits. So I think that's why it's important for the Nextera one, because I think it really opened the eyes of the town board to what's really happening. And I could say, because I was at a 3-hour work session with the town board, and when I provided the analysis, which said there was roughly 1,900 acres available in the Industrial A and the Industrial C zoning district, and when I stated that fact, I believe the acreage is about 660. And that's inclusive of the S-Power 1, all of the facilities that have been built, the Nextera, as well as the one that's under the Article 10 process. When I gave that number of 660 acres out of the available 1,900, I think some of the council members were very taken aback by that. And I think it was important for it to go to the town board, because the planning board may have gone through another positive declaration. I don't know that it would have necessarily woken up the town board to the town board acting as lead agency and them asking those pointed questions.
And I follow all of what you're saying, but my point is really something else. My point is the town staff was aware that this application was in the works. You met with them, and yet at that time you were doing a supplemental impact statement, which by law, as I read the seeker law, requires that you assess cumulative impacts. And since the town was aware of that project, why was that not added to the assessment? That's really my question. Everything else about the POSDEC and who has what, the lead agency, I follow your comments, but this is a different question.
And I will get an answer to the board on that, but I do believe in the POSDEC process for the first S-Power. I believe the board asked for potential build-out or for future sites. So I will look through that FEIS, and I know that there were maps provided, and I will see if these 2 parcels were identified. And if they were identified in that FEIS process as potential sites for solar siting, I believe that would address your question, correct?
It would, but.
But even still.
Yeah, I understand.
Why didn't anyone tell us that we have another application while this was going on? To me, that's equally disturbing. Is that all?
Thank you for your time, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, minutes of, November 21st
So moved?
for approval.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second to approve the minutes of November 21st. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved.
I'm going into.
We got this from the Pine Belt.
I've been speaking to Jefferson on that.
They have to do that?
We're getting some answers.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have an executive session, on the agenda, litigation with regard to Ed Partridge and Calverton Tree Farm. So motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so,
Good night, sir.
we just make sure.